It's a warm welcome here from our studios in Sarakunda. This is the Star TV News and I am Ajakari Sanya. In the headlines tonight, President Barrow presides over the opening of 2020 legal year. Jammeh to be arrested if he ever steps foot in the Gambia. Government officials meet Gambians in diaspora. The TRRC has resumed its public hearings. Scorpions coach Tom watches Abdoulaye Sanyang as SK Lomel defeats Locaran. An international scene, locust swarms threaten East Africa's crops. Bodies of Ukrainian victims of Iran plane crash repatriated. Houthis blamed after scores of Yemen soldiers killed in attack. Those were the headlines, now the news in detail. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Adama Barrow, on Sunday, 19 January, presided over the official opening of the 2020 legal year at the High Court in Banjul. He joined legal practitioners including the Chief Justice, Cabinet Ministers, National Assembly members, senior government officials. Tumani Koli was there, now he reports.
Since he assumed office back in 2017, this is the second time the President has presided over the opening of the legal year. As one of the most important events of the legal system, President Barrow used the opportunity to highlight some of the significant achievements his government has registered in the legal and judicial system for the past 3 years. While addressing the colorful gathering, President Barrow reaffirmed his government's commitment to a credible justice system in the Gambia. He noted that a credible justice system is a critical component in the stability of any nation. The President also noted that there will be no executive interference in the judicial system, as he promises a complete separation of power between the two organs of government.
Therefore, it is important for all branches of government and the general public to give the legal and justice system the much needed support for it to function responsibly. In this regard, I will cite a few examples to indicate my government's commitment to maintaining an efficient, respectable, and robust legal system. From 2017 to date,
the Chief Justice, Hassan B. Jallow, says the speedy dispensation of justice requires the efforts of all stakeholders, including the general public.
Reasonably, speedily, fairly, impartially, and independently. And the judicial officers have continued to perform under trying and difficult conditions, but at the same time to achieve these excellent results. I would like to commend them very, very much for their performance. Within this performance, I would like to single out particularly Brikama Magistrates Court for particular commendation, because out of 1,718 cases registered in 2019, they disposed of 1,222. And this was a disposal rate of 71% of their cases. A very good performance. But better still was Kanifing Court. Kanifing Court had a higher disposal rate of almost 90%. Out of their 1,981 cases, Kanifing was able to dispose of 1,656. That's an extremely high rate, and I'd like to commend particularly Kanifing and Brikama for their excellent performance, to commend the principal magistrates who are in those jurisdictions, respectively His Worship Mr. Cham and Her Worship Aissatou Jani.
Justice Jallow continued that the statistics of 2019 disposal cases are very encouraging. 5,446 cases were dropped off, representing a disposal rate of about 67%. This, according to Chief Justice Jallow, is pretty impressive. Tumani Koli, Star TV.
Former President Yahya Jammeh will be arrested immediately and charged if he is to ever return from exile in Equatorial Guinea, according to Attorney General and Minister of Justice Abubakar Tambadou. Mr. Tambadou made these strong-worded remarks on Sunday during the official opening of the 2020 legal year in Banjul. Binta Koli files in this report.
Former President Jammeh was forced into exile in 2017 after he lost the 2016 election and refused to step aside. He has been quietly living in Equatorial Guinea ever since. But recently, a purported audio of Jammeh has been making the rounds and headlines of media outlets. He asked his party militants to take to the street and demand for the government to implement the joint communique he signed with the international bodies before he left the coast of the Gambia. The APRC supporters did take to the street last Monday in a mass protest. However, while addressing the gathering at the opening of the 2020 legal year, Minister of Justice Abubakar Tambadou made it absolutely clear that Jammeh will be arrested and charged for crimes he allegedly committed if he ever returns to the Gambia, bringing to rest speculations about Jammeh's possible return following APRC's protest.
It can no longer be ruled out that crimes against humanity have been committed in the Gambia between July 1994 and January 2017 under former President Yahya Jammeh, and that those who will be identified by the TRRC will face certain prosecution in the most serious form. There will be accountability of the highest order for these crimes, and I assure the victims that it is now only a question of when and not if.
Honorable Tambadou assured the victims of former government that they will never be forsaken. He said, though the TRRC is just a fact-finding mission, the Commission still has a mandate to identify perpetrators for prosecution. Tambadou also warns against mocking victims. He said they should never confuse the government's tolerance for the rule of law for weakness. He says the government will not accept any form of intimidation or harassment of victims and witnesses by anyone. For Star TV News, I am Binta Koli.
In a press conference held at the Victims Center in Kololi, the victims vowed to sue Jammeh to justice whenever he set foot in the Gambia. However, the victims also revealed plans to stage a counter-protest against the APRC. Modubaji files in this report.
Barely days after the APRC staged a protest to demand for Jammeh's return, the victims of human rights violations under the Jammeh's regime planned to counter-protest. However, the APRC protest fanned flames of sorrow in the hearts of these victims, which triggered them to call for a protest. However, the national coordinator for the Victims Center, Adama Jallow, alleged that the 22 years of Jammeh's dictatorship was characterized by harassment, arbitrary arrests, and deep-rooted governance. The Victims Center also welcomed the Justice Minister's decision to arrest Jammeh if he set foot in the country. Mr. Jallow added that Jammeh will not return to this country as a free man without facing justice. Aissatou Jammeh, on her statement, indicates that the APRC protest was a mockery to the victims. Mr. Jallow added that Jammeh will not return to this country as a free man without facing justice. The Jammeh victims also recommended for the government to ban the APRC party. Aissatou Jammeh thanked the government of the Gambia through the Minister of Justice and the international communities for coming up with the TRRC.
All the victims.
We don't want to see Yahya Jammeh in this country anymore. We don't want to see him. He has no right to come back. He killed our husbands since 1994 up to date. We are tired.
Modu Elbaji, Star TV.
The 34th Student Union of the Gambia Technical Training Institute, GTTI, finally handed over their mantle of leadership to the upcoming executive to take over office. Binta Koli sent us this report.
Speaking at the gathering, Mr. Fabel Ensati Jallow, who happens to be the outgoing president of the 34th Student Union, said, since he takes office from his predecessor, he has always tried to put the interests of the students first. He said the task is not easy but did not fail to advise the upcoming president and his team. He said the task is not easy but did not fail to advise the upcoming president and his team. The ex-president added that he believed his executive body are the most fearing and law-abiding. The ex-president added that he believed his executive body are the most fearing and law-abiding union GTTR ever got. Mr. Abdul Seka, the outgoing Minister of Information, said the achievement made by the executive is unimaginable and have achieved what no other executive have did in the history of the school. Mr. Ture did not forget to thank the entire student body for the support they have received. John Luciano Bass, the incoming president, promised that his executive will work relentlessly to see that students will have a graduation ceremony. He also promised to see that the school is provided with enough seats and tables. For Star TV News, I am Binta Koli.
The Gambia head coach Tom Saintfiet, who has been monitoring Abdullah's situation, was on Friday, 17 January 2020 at the Sovereign Stadium as SK Lamel collected the maximum 3 points in a crucial encounter with SK Locust in the Belgium second tier. Omar Job files in this report.
Tom, who watched Abdullah's match for the second time, insisted to invite him for a test match during the international break before CAF reverse fixture decision was took to play AFCON in January 2020 instead of the summer as earlier scheduled, which means Gambia will lock horns with Gabon for the two-leg encounter in an AFCON qualifiers in March 2020. Abdoulaye Sanyang Ali as Bambalai, who is enjoying his trade in the Belgian second tier with SK Lomel, scored 3 goals and provided 4 assists. Played the full 90 in a crucial encounter with SK Lomel in Belgium First Division B second stage as SK Lomel won by a goal to nil. Speaking after the match, Abdoulaye Sanyang said he is very happy for the 3 points, though he would have loved to be on the score sheet, but the important thing was they won. He further states that he is excited as Tom watched his side edge past Locust to temporarily top the league table before Belshot played St. Gilosi in Saturday's fixture, which ended 1-1. This is the second time the coach was my game, as the first was when we lost to Ot Heavily in the first half of the season. He said, "The coach intends to invite me on a test match, which will no longer stand as Gambia will play Gabon on that international break in the AFCON qualifiers," he lamented. Meanwhile, Bambalai is waiting to see what the future holds unto him, as he is eager to represent the nation color in no time soon. Next for Bambalai's SK Lomel is an away trip to Stade Joseph Marian Stadium on the 26th of January to face Union St. Gilosi in the Belgium second tier. For Star TV News, I am Omar Diop.
We'll be going for a short break and we'll be right back with international news. Please stay tuned. Now news beyond our borders. The worst locust plague in 25 years is wiping out East Africa's crops, further straining food supplies in an area that is already at risk from bad weather and conflicts. Authorities say unseasonal rains have caused the outbreak and they have now started spraying insecticides on the harvests. Al Jazeera's Malcolm Webb reports from Samburu County, Kenya.
Sakana Lenene's attempts to scare off this swarm of locusts are almost completely futile. He's the chief of a community of herders here in eastern Kenya.
They are eating the shrubs until it is finished. We are very worried because once there is no these small shrubs, animals can die.
The swarms crossed from neighbouring Somalia and Ethiopia in recent weeks. It's the worst plague of locusts to affect the region in 70 years. One locust by itself looks harmless, but it can eat its body mass in plant matter every day, and so a swarm of tens or even hundreds of millions can eat tons of food each day And that's devastating for the farmers and herders who live here. It's dry for most of the year. The people depend on their animals to survive. The animals depend on the plants, and the plants are being devoured. The government started spraying insecticides, which it says are harmless to people and livestock. It's released $2 million to fund the fight against the locusts. The UN's also contributed. There are many farms in the neighbouring province. There, the locusts could devastate food supplies and the economy. The response is meant to stop that. But it hasn't been working well. We found this swarm the day after it had been sprayed. This village administrator told us the actions taken so far haven't been effective and more must be done.
We've seen that the number that they have come to kill, very low number. So I don't think that it is working. It doesn't work well.
And so the locusts keep eating and their population keeps growing. But the agriculture minister told us the insecticide is now working and the swarms will soon be stopped.
The chemicals I'm told were not really the wrong one. I think it's the mixing, the intensity of the ingredients that kill them. That was a problem. That has been corrected. Government is taking total charge of the situation.
Scientists say it was unseasonal rains across the region last month that caused the locust population to boom. It watered the plants they eat. And they'll soon start to threaten people's food security if their feasting isn't stopped. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera, Samburu County, Kenya.
Leaked documents suggest that Isabel dos Santos, Africa's richest woman and daughter of Angola's former president, siphoned hundreds of millions of dollars of Angolan government money. However, dos Santos has dismissed the so-called Luanda leaks obtained by journalist organization ICIJ and released on Sunday as witch hunt meant to discredit her and her father. Al Jazeera's Alexia O'Brien reports.
This is the woman at the centre of an investigation dubbed the Luanda leaks. Isabel dos Santos, the daughter of Angola's former president, a billionaire and Africa's richest woman. Success, she argues, is self-made. But a group of journalists say documents prove she ripped off her country to enrich herself.
Our investigation, which took 8 months and more than 100 journalists to complete, found that Dos Santos, aided by her sort of a cadre of Western advisors, funneled hundreds of millions of dollars into offshore shell companies, and from there into all kinds of assets, including luxury homes and big businesses.
Her father, José Eduardo dos Santos, ruled the country for almost 40 years until 2017. The group says he gave her big chunks of some of Angola's most valuable resources, and she built a business empire that stretched from telecommunications to banking and construction. She used to head Angola's national oil company, Sonangol, before being forced out by her father's successor, João Lourenço. His government has suspended some of her projects and seized an estimated $1 billion worth of assets in a corruption drive. Earlier this month, she told Al Jazeera it was a political vendetta.
Definitely, this is a politically motivated attack. There's no doubt about that. My father was the former ruler of Angola. He was president for a very long time, and he chose not to stand for these elections. He chose not to stand in 2017, believing that it was important to have a transition. It was important for someone new to come. And unfortunately, the new people who came on board have now trying to conduct these politically motivated attacks on his family and especially on his children.
Last month, Isabel's half-brother, José Filomeno dos Santos, went on trial for corruption. He's pleaded not guilty. Angola is rich in oil and diamonds, but it remains one of the world's poorest countries with a staggering wealth gap. The ICIJ accuses Angolan government officials, as well as Western financial firms, lawyers and accountants, of helping Isabel dos Santos stash away public funds.
The Portuguese authorities are possibly investigating, and other governments around the globe are likely to take a closer look at some of the money that's flowed through their financial systems.
Despite her legal troubles, Isabel dos Santos remains defiant. She's even considering running for president in Angola's next election in 2022. Alexia O'Brien, Al Jazeera.
The bodies of 11 Ukrainian citizens who died when a passenger plane was accidentally shot down by Iran this month have returned to Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky looked on Sunday as coffins draped in the country's flag were carried from a Ukrainian military plane to a waiting hearse at Boryspil International Airport, east of the capital Kyiv. Al Jazeera's Katrin San reports.
Bodies of 11 Ukrainians killed on board a passenger plane, which Iran said it has mistakenly shot down, have been repatriated. They've received a military guard of honor in Kiev in a ceremony attended by President Volodymyr Zelensky. Authorities in Iran say they're analyzing the flight recorders from the Ukrainian airliner and have no current plans to send the black boxes overseas. Iran is under pressure to compensate the families of the 176 victims. Let's speak to our correspondent in Tehran, Dorsa Jabari. Dorsa, first, what's the latest in the investigation? And Iranian authorities had said they were sending the black box recorders of the plane to Ukraine. What's changed?
Well, we know that over the past 24 hours, there was some confusion about whether or not the authorities here would send the 2 black boxes that they retrieved from the crash site near Imam Khomeini Airport. But according to the head of the investigations team of the Civil Aviation Authority in Iran, the Iranians have no plans to send either of the black boxes to be analyzed either in Ukraine or any other Western country, for that matter, for the foreseeable future. That's what we know so far. We do know that the 150 bodies out of the 176 victims have been identified and have been given back to the loved ones. The 11 that we know have been sent back to Ukraine is just part of the ones that they are given back the bodies to the country that they're supposed to go back to. The authorities here say that they don't plan on giving this black boxes to any other country for the time being because they're still analyzing. They're trying to retrieve the data that is on those boxes to try and piece together what happened in the last moments of the flight before it was shut down by Iranian officials. This is something that has been ongoing. They also have had officials from the Ukraine, Germany, and France and Canada who have come to Iran to help in the investigation. So we are waiting to find out more about the first initial reports that will come from this investigation. But for the time being, we know that the black boxes will remain in Iran.
And what's been happening on the diplomatic front, Dorsa?
Well, there was a lot of criticism initially, not only by the international community, but also by Iranians inside the country, because officials here denied any involvement in this plane being shot down. They said that it was impossible, and for days they denied it happening. And then in this sudden turn of events, we saw that the Revolutionary Guard admitted that it had mistakenly shot down the plane. Since then, there's been a lot of diplomatic efforts trying to salvage the faith that people would have in the authorities here. And we've even heard from the Supreme Leader delivering a rare Friday sermon this past Friday in Tehran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who said that indeed this was a bitter accident and it's broken the hearts of the nation, but that the Western powers are seeking this opportunity to question Iran's Revolutionary Guard and the commitment the Iranian public has in the Islamic establishment. So he warned that not to let the diplomacy that is ongoing to question the fundamentals of this country. At the same time, the Foreign Minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, has been meeting with the Canadian Foreign Minister because a number of the victims had dual nationalities. They were Canadian Iranians, and the Canadian government has had a big part in all of this as well. He met with the Canadian Foreign Minister in Oman on Saturday, and they continue to have this dialogue to try and resolve the ongoing investigation and trying to further cooperation between all sides and trying to figure out what actually happened and put this incident behind them. But there's a lot more questions than answers at the moment, and the government is certainly trying its best to not let this incident destroy Iran's diplomatic relations.
Dorsa Jabari in Tehran, thank you.
More than 100 people, mostly government soldiers, have been killed in Yemen in a missile strike on a military camp. The government is blaming Houthi rebels for the attack, but so far no one has claimed responsibility. Al Jazeera's Nicola Gay reports.
After nearly 5 years of violence, The war in Yemen is showing no signs of ending. This hospital is filled with government soldiers and civilians injured in Saturday's attack on a military camp in the region of Marib. More than 100 were killed.
It was around sunset prayer. We prayed and then we sat down. Then the missile hit. It was around 6:30. And for 10 minutes or so, I couldn't feel anything around me. So many of my friends were killed.
This is all that's left of the mosque that was targeted, blown apart by a ballistic missile. Yemen's government, backed by a Saudi UAE-led military coalition, has blamed the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels and has vowed to retaliate.
We would like to offer our condolences to our nation, our armed forces, and the families of the fallen, those who were killed in a heinous attack by the Iranian-backed Houthi militias. The fallen were true heroes, soldiers in our armed forces. Among the dead are also civilians.
The war has created what the UN has labelled the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Since the start of the conflict, it's estimated more than 91,000 Yemenis have been killed and another 3 million displaced by the fighting. Nicola Gage, Al Jazeera.
Before we end the news, a recap of our main headlines. President Barrow presides over the opening of 2020 legal year. Jammeh to be arrested if he ever steps foot in the Gambia. Government officials meet Gambians in diaspora. Scorpions coach Tom watches Abdoulaye Sanyang as SK Lobel defeats Lokeren. The TRRC has resumed its public hearings. That's all for this edition of the news. Please enjoy the rest of our programs and join us tomorrow for more news. Thank you.